Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
You think they might hire Susan Rice to replace him? Well, I mean, how about that? Would that not be an interesting twist? Hi, folks. How you doing? Great to have you here. Rush Limbaugh back at it. Here at the Excellence in Broadcasting Network, 800-282-2882. If you want to be on the program, the email address, rushbo@eibnet.us. Okay, so the left has a scalp. According to numerous media sources, Steve Bannon, the number one strategist for Donald Trump, has been stripped of his security clearance. As you know, Bannon was initially placed on the National Security Council. And when this happened, there were outcries from all segments and sectors and quarters of the political media complex. It was unheard of. It was never done before. You never put a political guy like Susan Rice. You never put a political person at the National Security Council. National security isn't political. This just isn't done. This is outrageous. And so the left added another arrow in the quiver that they were aiming at the Trump people, including Bannon. They have hated the fact that Bannon got this gig from the day Bannon got the gig. They have despised it. They have been envious. They have been jealous. It's unheard of. So they have been making moves subtly to discredit Bannon throughout the media. You know, the Washington Post did I'm not kidding you here. Washington Post did a 4-reporter, multiple-page, thousands of word story on all the different places Bannon has lived in his life to try to indicate he's not stable, that the guy doesn't put down roots anywhere. And I guess as a result, you can't trust him. They have been after Steve Bannon ever since Trump decided to make him the number one strategist. Because, you know, Bannon was at Breitbart, and that supposedly meant that Bannon was alt-right. That supposedly meant that Bannon was a white supremacist. That supposedly meant that Bannon was a populist and not a conservative. And that supposedly meant that Bannon was a really, really dangerous guy. So the news here is that President Trump reportedly has removed Steve Bannon from the National Security Council. Bloomberg has it. Fox News has it. Drudge is leading with it. Bannon joined Trump's campaign last year as chief executive officer. Then, after the election, he became Trump's chief strategist. Bannon's removal comes as part of a larger reorganization of the National Security Council. Homeland Security Advisor Tom Bossert has also had his role downgraded, Bloomberg reported, citing a person familiar with the decision. Anyway, this is all going to be reported as a major demotion, and the left is going to be claiming and acting like they just got a scalp, that they are forcing Trump to make moves. And they're not going to be speculating what next will happen. What next will Bannon lose? What next will Trump take away from him? Is Bannon on the way out? Is that what this means? And if Bannon's on the way out, then maybe that's going to be a signal that Trump is moderating. I can see all of this now. So I just want to prepare you for it. Now, I also think, ladies and gentlemen, well, it has scrolled out of view. The original tweet that Donald Trump stated that Trump Tower was being surveilled, wiretapped, and so forth by President Obama. With the Susan Rice stuff, it's beginning to look more and more like there is something to that. And Trump is, as time passes, generally proved correct in these allegations, predictions, accusations that he makes. The Susan Rice story continues, it builds, and so forth, and a lot of people are trying to make her actions criminal when they may not be per se. Clearly you have abuses of power here. And I must point out that my friend Andy McCarthy just published a post at National Review making this point. Now, that doesn't mean that if, for example, she is called to testify before a committee or two, or if she has to do an FBI interview, and she's been interviewed before, what if they could get her on a process crime? What if she has lied? Look, this woman lies repeatedly. She lied to Andrea Mitchell, NBC News Washington, or she lied to whoever she spoke to prior to Andrea Mitchell, or she lied about Benghazi. The woman lies. The odds are, if she testifies, she might make herself vulnerable to one of these famous Martha Stewart process crimes, in which it would become criminal. So it is clear that there is something highly irregular here. It is very clear that the Obama administration was surveilling the Trump people. It is very clear that the purpose of the surveillance was to undermine the Trump campaign. And then it becomes very clear that the purpose of the surveillance was to undermine the presidency once Trump won it. And when I say very clear, I'm saying, to me, I don't have any doubts about what went on here. And I think it's splitting hairs to say, well, they weren't really targeting Trump officials. How do you know? I mean, look at Obama owes electoral victories to this exact kind of thing. Look at all these sealed divorce decrees that Obama succeeded in getting unsealed about his opponents running for state senate and then United States senator. We know that Obama wiretapped and spied on Angela Merkel. We already know that this is a pattern of behavior by Obama and his presidency and his White House. So why is it difficult to assume? It seems to me it's intelligence guided by experience, or experience guided by intelligence, that if Obama wanted to find out and get dirt on Trump people, he knows how to do it. He's done it before. He did. Angela Merkel, the Prime Minister of Germany, or President, whatever, Chancellor, whatever title is. So none of this is something that hasn't happened before. All of it has happened before. And in the famous linear thinking, philosophical thinking of Blaise Pascal, it's much easier to believe that something that has happened could happen again or will happen again. In fact, it's much harder to believe that something that hasn't happened will happen. Did you follow that? It's very straightforward. And in the case of Obama, it's all happened before. Every bit of this has happened before. The way this would happen on purpose, you knowingly surveil foreign targets who you know are going to be talking to members of the Trump transition team. You knowingly surveil people that are going to be targeting, listening, talking to Trump campaign officials, transition officials, administration officials. And you can then say, well, we were targeting Trump people. We were targeting, say, the Russian ambassador or whoever else, the Turkish ambassador, whoever it might have been. But the real purpose of it was to get the American side of the conversation. You'd never be able to go to a FISA court and get a warrant for that, but you will always be able to get permission and a warrant to surveil foreign actors. So you target the ones you know are going to be talking to people you want to eavesdrop on or surveil. It wouldn't be difficult to do at all, and it looks like that's exactly what's happened. Then you throw Evelyn Farkas into this in terms of the leaking. You know, Rice has maintained she didn't leak anything. Here's a question, and it wasn't political. She says it wasn't political what she did. Really, was there any unmasking of Hillary Clinton campaign officials? Was there any surveillance of Hillary Clinton campaign officials? I mean, the Russians are talking to her, too. The Turks and everybody else. Remember, they think Hillary is going to win the election, and so you don't think that ground building was going on during the campaign, Hillary making contact or representatives of her making contact with these foreign actors that she's going to be dealing with. Hell, she already knows them because they've been donating to her website, donating to her foundation, donating to her campaign, paying her $250,000 to do 20-minute meaningless speeches. Why wasn't any of that unmasked? And if it was, why do we not know it? If Hillary Clinton campaign officials were surveilled in the same way Trump's people were, then maybe they could say that this wasn't political. Maybe they could say, nope, we were simply engaging in what we have to do to protect the national security of the United States. But if they were making no effort to find out who Hillary's people were talking to and what they were saying to foreign actors, and if there was no leakage, and if there was no unmasking of anything to do with Hillary, wouldn't that kind of indicate that that same action against Trump was and had to be political? Seems to me to be the case. Now, we've got this. We've got the Gorsuch nomination and the confirmation vote and the potential filibuster, the pulling of the nuclear option to take the vote back down to only needing 51 to confirm a justice to the U.S. Supreme Court. There are news stories all over the place today describing how if McConnell does this, if McConnell exercises a nuclear option, the country will never be the same again. We're going to be tearing down the very fabric which built the greatness of our country. I just sit there and laugh at this. The left conveniently forgets everything that happened prior to last November. And things from this November on are unique and have never happened before, and the Republicans are walking down a dangerous road. There's a fork in the road, and they're going to take it, and the country hangs in the balance, and it's as though none of this has ever happened before. It's like the government shutdown. We have a party reversal here. The Democrats are thinking of shutting down the government, at the end of this month, because there has to be a budget funding bill authorized. And there's going to be, in the budget that the House submits, that Trump submits, there's going to be a bunch of riders to the budget that feature conservative values, such as actually defunding the EPA, some of these other things that Trump has started with executive orders. The Democrats are saying, you can't do that. You can't do that. That's not our values. You can't do that. Republicans are saying, you lost the election. We won the election. We are the authority. The Democrats are saying, we do not respect your authority. We do not consider that you won. Your election was illegal and tainted, and therefore we don't recognize your authority. And so if you attach the things that you believe to this budget, then we're going to shut down the government, and we're going to blame you, and the media is going to blame you, and therefore everybody's going to think that you guys shut down the government again, because you Republicans always shut down the government, even when you don't. If that happens, it will be the Democrats admitting that they are shutting down the government, knowing that the Republicans are going to get blamed for it by the media. In this sense, this is exactly what I mean when I say that the media the Democrats are an arm of the media, not the other way around. In other words, the media is the permanent, unending home of the American left and the progressive movement, and the Democrats are just the hacks and the operatives that implement it all. But the real power, the real foundation, the real force of liberalism is the media. The Democrats simply are an arm of that, and this is a great explanation of that. The Democrats will shut down the government because the Republicans who won the election will implement their ideas and their ideology, as is what happens in a constitutional republic. The Democrats refuse to accept the authority that the Republicans won the election. Therefore, they refuse to accept the authority of the Republicans. And in this whole Supreme Court fight, where we're headed is at the end of all of this, the Democrats are going to even strip moral authority from the Supreme Court if they're not careful. Right now, where we are in our country, and you know this as well as I do, it has simply evolved that the Supreme Court is the final word on every controversial political and cultural issue, right? Whenever there's a dispute that ends up in the courts, be it political, be it legal, it always, if it ends up at the Supreme Court, what the Supreme Court says is the end of the process, right? That was never intended, by the way, by the founders. The court assumed that responsibility in a case called Marbury versus Madison. The fact that it was never intended is neither here nor there for the purpose of this discussion. The point is that we just seem to have gotten to a place where, as a society, as a population, as a country, that we accept the Supreme Court and its decisions as final. When the court rules on an issue, that's it. There is nowhere else to go to litigate it. There's nowhere else to appeal. The only thing that can happen is that legislators can rewrite whatever law was in question. Seldom happens. But what's at risk now, and this may not be a bad thing actually, is the delegitimization of even the court itself. With all of these moves that the Democrats are making, which is all rooted in one thing, the refusal to accept that they lost the election. The refusal to accept that the Republicans won the election. And by extension, the refusal to accept that Trump won the election. And therefore, there is, as far as the Democrats are concerned, no authority. The only authority they respect is themselves. When they win elections, then they totally acquiesce to the authority vested in their president, as long as he stays true. If he deviates, then he's gone, and that authority is vested somewhere else. But the authority is never vested in the opposition party, in this case, the Republicans. So the Democrats, whether they are aware of it or not, are in the process of undermining the moral authority of the court by way of how judges end up on the court. The entire confirmation process. The fact that looks like now every judge confirmed to position of justice on the Supreme Court will barely get there. 52-48, 51-49, 51-50, whatever the number, there will never be such as 96 senators voting for Ruth Buzzy Ginsburg, 98 senators voting for Scalia. Those days are long gone. And so even the justices who make it are considered pockmarked. And now the Democrats have launched a last-minute Anita Hill type move on Gorsuch, claiming he's a plagiarist. The Politico and BuzzFeed have found 3 examples, and the people that Gorsuch is accused of plagiarizing are all standing up and saying, no, he didn't plagiarize me. The media refuses to accept what they're saying. Have you heard the furor over the latest Pepsi ad, which caused an explosion on Twitter last night? You haven't heard about this? Okay, Pepsi has a new ad, and basically it involves the younger Kardashian babe. What's her name? What is her name? Jenner. Kardashian's whatever, the blonde one. It's not Khloe and it's not Kim. I got them all confused. Kendall Jenner. That sounds like it might be. It doesn't matter. There is a public protest featured in this ad. It looks like an anti-Trump protest. Looks like an anti-whatever protest in Ferguson, Missouri. Large group of people. And this Kardashian Jenner babe walks up and gives a can of Pepsi to a policeman. And this big group of multiracial millennial protesters cheer. By the way, folks, speaking of Ferguson, Missouri had county and city elections yesterday. Ferguson reelected the white mayor. And the left is outraged. The left is beside itself here. There was a black woman running against the white male mayor. The mayor got 56% of the vote. The black woman running against him got 44% of the vote. You know what the racial makeup in Ferguson is? The population is 67.4% black, 29.3% white, and the incumbent white mayor was re-elected. And NBC News is beside itself. The Associated Press is beside itself. It doesn't know how to explain this. This could not have happened, and they're deeply searching for explanations for it because it doesn't make sense to them, because it doesn't fit what they think they created in Ferguson with the coverage of that mythical hands up, don't shoot. They think they poisoned the well against all white people in Ferguson and converted the town to a largely black town, and they thought they had done a good job. And Obama went in there, took over the police department based on the fact they thought it was racist. Another one of these consent decrees allowing the Obama Department of Justice to determine how the Ferguson Police Department ran itself. Otherwise, they wouldn't get any federal money. And then this election happens. And they're beside themselves. They can't figure it out. You know, when things that happen outside the Beltway happen, they are clueless. They cannot explain them, especially when they think they have gone someplace like Ferguson and forever poisoned the well. And when the people don't behave, as in vote, the way the media and the Democrats think they should, then we have problems. Now, about this Pepsi ad, what this really is, or what really has the left agitated here, is that these protests are serious things. They're really serious, and they're engaged in by really committed people against genuine fascist, authoritarian pigs like Trump. And to have Pepsi go in there and claim that giving a cop a Pepsi will make the protesters stop protesting is offensive, it's absurd, and now Pepsi is hated. Pepsi is despised. Twitter last night blew up against Pepsi for, quote, appropriating anti-Trump resistance to sell soda. So they went in there and they made the protesters look like they were anti-Trump people and that they could be bought off and silenced with a cop accepting a gift of Pepsi in the midst of the protest. Now, as an adjunct to this, you know, I study advertising to a certain extent because I think it gives us a clue as to our culture. Because advertisers' main objective is to separate people from their money. And so advertising has to be culturally relevant. It has to be hip, at least to the audience targeted. So if you're running ads at millennials, if you're aiming your advertising campaign at whatever demographic, whatever age group, you have to be very confident you know who that age group is and what they consider important, unimportant, and all that. And that's why people think, well, whoever ran this campaign totally botched this, because to say that a soft drink in a can, these people hate cans, by the way. The protesters hate cans because they pollute. They destroy the planet, don't you see? It's aluminum. It's just destructive as hell. And then to add insult to injury, that you give a cop who's the focus of evil in the left wing, you give him a Pepsi, and that makes everybody stand down. The left feels cheapened. They think that Pepsi is attempting to appropriate their anti-Trump movement. So as an adjunct, I have been noticing the commercials that Coke is running lately. And the reason I've been focused on this or interested in it is that there is an all-out assault on sugar in our country today for the health reasons, and the sugar lobby. The sugar kings largely donate to Republicans, although they actually spread it around. But sugar is absolutely horrible. You know, sugar is destroys teeth, it creates diabetes, and all these crazy allegations about it. It's an enemy. People should not look at how much corn syrup is in a can of soft drink. People oppose it. At this stage, certain people, millennials and so, very, very wary of sugary drinks. So how is Coke dealing with this? Well, the Coke commercials that I've seen do not use a can. The Coca-Cola in the commercials all comes out of a bottle, but that's not what's important. What's important is the setting. Coca-Cola is being positioned as the beverage at family dinners, at family barbecues, when the family goes to a restaurant, upscale or fast food. A bottle of Coke is present at every one of them. Coca-Cola is attempting to position their beverage not with any current political movement or anti-Trump movement, which Pepsi was trying to capitalize on anti-Trump, just proving they don't understand it. Because you can't do anything that makes the cops look good. in the Trump resistance. Anything that makes the cops look good, you are going to bomb. So you don't find the cops in a Coke commercial unless one of the family members happens to be one. That's all family settings, with Coke being prominent, but made to look like it's just as much a part of the get-together as the meal is. And it doesn't matter if it's at home or at an upscale restaurant or fast food. There's that bottle of Coke, and everybody's smiling, and the family looks great and having a great time. Which of those two campaigns do you think has the greater chance of succeeding, given the war on sugary drinks? Now, folks, let me take a brief departure here. Oh, I may have to issue a minor correction. Steve Bannon may not have lost his security clearance in being demoted from the National Security Council. I was told that he has lost his security clearance even before I saw the story on the National Security Council, Bannon being removed from it. But I don't know that for certain, so I should take that back. What is interesting is how it happened. Now, when Trump chose Bannon to be the CEO of the campaign, Trump and Bannon go back a ways. You know, Bannon has worked at Goldman Sachs. Bannon was right there in the beginning of the production of the TV show Seinfeld and retains syndication rights. Bannon has made a good living all of his life. He has lived in any number of places. He's been in the high world of high finance, world of Hollywood entertainment. And he ended up at the Breitbart website, which is funded largely by a conservative hedge fund family by the name of Mercer. I'm just giving you information. No judgment here, just giving you information. Trump knows Bannon prior to this campaign. I don't know how far back. I don't know what the connection is. It probably would be something to do with the entertainment industry in Goldman Sachs, since Trump was there at NBC for The Apprentice and Celebrity Apprentice. In other words, Trump did not just hear Bannon running Breitbart, well, oh, man, I like this guy, and hire him. The relationship goes back. And when this happened, Bannon was at the top of the food chain of Trump advisors, except for Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who is the husband of the eldest daughter, Ivanka. Bannon is not family, and of course Kushner and Ivanka are. I mentioned to you some weeks ago, it might not be as many weeks ago as I think, could be 10 days, 14 days, but there are two people in the Trump inner circle that are the exact opposite of people like Bannon and Reince Priebus. And they are more aligned with Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump. And one of them is Gary Cohn. He's a very ideological liberal Democrat. He was a trader at Goldman Sachs. And his associate is a woman, and now I'm having a mental block on her name. But she and Gary Cohn have now ascended to new heights, advisory roles in the Trump administration. And people analyze this, have looked at it and say, what, these two people, Cohn, and I'm having a mental block on the woman's name. Somebody will furnish it to me. And when I see it, I'm going to get embarrassed. I forgot it. But anyway, people say, why are they there? They are in direct conflict with practically everybody else Trump has put in his inner circle. Well, they're there because of Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs is high finance. High finance is very seductive. Money and high finance are overwhelmingly seductive. And they happen to be big leftists. And I remember suggesting that, well, not suggesting, it's been reported that there are constant internal battles for Trump's ear within his inner circle. That Gary Cohn and the babe, keep wanting to say Nina, it's not Nina. It's gonna come to me in a minute. But anyway, they're constantly vying for Trump's attention. Bannon is vying, Priebus is banning, all this stuff. We don't really know what goes on. This is just the stuff that's reported. And, of course, as it's reported, it's made to look like there's great conflict. So I'm just telling you all this because what's going to happen here is, as the Bannon losing his slot on the National Security Council story reverberates and expands, you're going to hear that maybe the Democrats in Trump's inner circle are winning. Maybe, because the original story on this was how they were losing. That they were there and they were vying for Trump's attention, trying to get their version of policy implemented by Trump, but that he wasn't listening to them. He was listening to the Bannons. He was listening to the Priebus's. He was listening to Mike Pence. And now people are going to say, because Bannon has been removed from the NSC, that maybe Gary Cohn and the other Democrats in there are starting to have sway. And of course, Jared Kushner, the son-in-law. It's Diana. I think it's Diana. No, it's not Jamie Gorelick. She was in the Clinton administration. I'm thinking the woman that works with Gary Cohn. She's also from Goldman Sachs. I'll find it during the break. At any rate, I'm just making a prediction here to you that Bannon being removed from the National Security Council is going to lead to all kinds of news in the drive-bys that you're not going to like seeing. And I'm just trying to prep you for it. We'll take a break and be back after this. Okay, we got a great roster of phone calls coming up. All of you people that are on hold, please stay there. I'm going to get to you quicker than usual today. Just a couple of things here I want to start taking care of. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, over the course of many years of this program, one of my objectives has been to find the conclusive, unalterable explanation of liberalism. And the key is the simplest, because there's so many definitions of it, and there's so many explanations. And I'm talking about ways in which to persuade people what it is and why you should never buy into it, become one, or be it. It has been a quest of mine to come up with the simplest, best explanation for what is happening. For example, I touched on it earlier here, and I stumbled across a column inadvertently by a guy named Daniel Greenfield at Front Page Magazine, who describes the current circumstance in our country as a civil war. And he goes on to explain why it's a civil war. And he touches on a couple things that really intrigued me. So I then began exploring them on my own, asking questions of myself, and then trying to answer them as a means by which I could arrive at an explanation for you that gets close, or as close as possible, to the way I'm thinking. Let me ask you this. Are all of you that are on my team on this stuff, or all of you who voted for Trump, all of you anti-Democrat, all of you conservatives, libertarians, whatever, do you not every day ask yourself, in one form or another, when is this going to end? Or maybe it's another variation. How are we going to beat these people? Or does it become, will we? And then if you go further, how? But in any case, people are, why in the world are things this way? Why does winning an election seem to mean nothing? Why does the left refuse to accept the constitutional norms that make this country what it is? Why does the left constantly object and refute and refuse to abide by the constitutional? Because the Constitution and the adherence to it is the glue that keeps this country together. The Constitution is the glue that maintains this country for what it is, a constitutional republic. But for that to exist, both or all political factions have to ultimately agree that the Constitution is the authority. And I think where we are right now is that the left doesn't accept any authority other than themselves. In their minds, there is no losing an election. You have elections because you have them and you'd like to win them. But losing them doesn't change a thing. It just changes the way you go about accomplishing what you want to accomplish. But you never adopt the attitude of having lost because you simply don't accept the fact that the other side won. For whatever reason. I'm not even talking about this specific where they think Trump colluded with the Russians. I'm talking any like George W. Bush never accepted the authority that Bush was president. They had an excuse there, too, the Florida recount. But it is this refusal to accept like we do. When we lose elections, what do? We let them pick their judges. They won. That's what our system means. We fight some of them, like Merrick Garland, but for the most part, they get their nominees in the bureaucracy. They get their judges. We respect the authority. We grant that there is an authority that is keeping the country glued together. They do not. And so when asking the question, when is it going to end? Well, how do civil wars end? I must take a break. I've just gotten started on this, but I want to warn you that it's coming during the program today, and lots of other stuff, too. So you stay glued, speaking of that, to where you are. By the way, of all places, NBC News is reporting Bannon may have stepped down on his own. He only attended one meeting. He was only there as a placeholder after Flynn left, but that he never really wanted to be there. So NBC is portraying this as not a gigantic demotion, but rather Bannon going where he wanted to go. We're keeping a sharp eye. We got more straight ahead. No, we're not going to jip that. We'll roll tape on it. Anything comes out of it, we'll have it later. There's a joint press conference between Trump and King Abdullah. of Jordan. Do a joint presser. Trump getting really interested here in the Middle East. Broker peace there. He wants to revive health care and get that going again. He just keeps taking bigger bites here of things. Just keeps marching on down his agenda, and the left is beside itself. They have not deterred Trump at all on this, something they are entirely unaccustomed to, by the way. They are accustomed to intimidating, frightening, scaring, silencing opposition. Trump is acting like he doesn't even hear them. They're going crazy. They're getting crazier. Greetings. Welcome back. El Rushbo behind the golden EIB microphone. Telephone number 800-282-2882. And if you want to send an email, lrushbo@eibnet.us. The media is also a bit of a buzz because Trump's out there saying that Susan Rice may have committed crimes. Now, what's fascinating about this to me is that Trump generally ends up being proven right with all these things. No matter how outrageous they sound at the time, after a certain passage of time, it ends up that Trump is much more right than he was ever wrong. Sweden is a great recent example of that, claiming that Obama tapped his wires at Trump Tower. The Obama administration, it's absurd, it's ridiculous, Trump's insane, this is lunacy. And now we've learned everything we've learned, that Susan Rice was unmasking and requesting, and that there was surveillance of Trump people, be it incidentally or direct. Trump was right. In the overall generic sense, he and his team were being spied on by the Obama administration, just as the regime spied on Merkel, and just as they spied on Israel, and just as they helped the opponent of Netanyahu in his campaign against Netanyahu. So we're not being asked to accept something that hasn't happened before. The fact that the Obama administration spied on people was everyday commonality. So Trump saying that she may have committed a crime, that crosses a line that nobody heretofore had leveled as an allegation. It was rumored, it was whispered, it was this. But when Trump comes, I mean, that's like 3 megaphones. When he says she may have committed crimes, of course, that leads now into potential grand jury testimony, congressional investigation testimony. And if this woman has lied under oath on previous occasions and is exposed, now we're talking criminality. It doesn't have to be that she was behaving criminally in her role at the National Security Council. It could be, I mean, if you've committed a crime, you've committed a crime. And Trump's now on the warpath. This is something that Democrats, I'm telling you, are still not accustomed to. They're not used to. This is not merely fighting back. This is throwing hand grenades back. There was a hand grenade that Trump launched when he accused Obama of tapping his wires at Trump Tower. I mean, these guys in media don't want to admit it. That totally changed this story. The first thing that happened when Trump lobbed that grenade is they denied that there was even an investigation. In their ongoing effort to make Trump look insane. What do you mean, Trump? We don't care that much about it. There's no investigate. Really? What's all that stuff that's been in the New York Times and CNN for the past 2 months then? What are all these leaks from the intelligence community? Where'd that stuff come from if I'm not being surveilled? If I'm not being wiretapped or whatever, then how does all that stuff end up in the New York Times? So that kind of reversal of inertia is something they're not accustomed to, Republicans fighting back in that way at all. The Gorsuch circumstance here, this is another. Democrats have generally, not always, but they've had their way in terms of public opinion on controversies like this, such as government shutdowns or Republicans nominating out of the mainstream judges. But this is going to backfire on them, too. I don't know whether the nuclear option is going to be triggered. I don't really know. We won't know that until probably Friday. because there's a lot of posturing right now from both sides, primarily Democrats, claiming unity, claiming that the triggering of the nuclear option, that would be the last straw. That would be the end of life as we know it. That would be a terrible, terrible thing to do to the Senate. Well, despite the fact that Harry Reid's done it how many times previous? This is what I meant in the previous hour. The Democrats, there is no history prior to Trump's election. They have no history. There is no behavioral pattern of the Democrats that you could go monitor or analyze or repeat. It doesn't exist. It's not relevant. Whatever Harry Reid did, he didn't do it. You just think he did. Reid didn't do anything. They have to act like what Mitch McConnell and the Republicans are contemplating here had never been done. It's the biggest assault on our way of life we've ever seen. It's outrageous. It's never. Yeah, that's how they lived and died on the left with this stuff. So let me continue with this quest. It's one that I am on to satisfy myself as well. Trying to find the magic explanation for the purposes of persuasion, the maximum explanation of liberalism that you could use in any instance of the left behaving as they do. And I was intrigued when I stumbled across a column that's back on March 27th at Front Page Mag, that website's David Horowitz's website, called The Civil War is Here, by Daniel Greenfield. He's the Shillman Journalism Fellow at the Freedom Center, New York writer. He focuses on radical Islam. He says a civil war has begun, and this civil war very different from the last one. No cannons, no cavalry charges. The left does not want to secede, as the South did. What the left wants is to rule. Political conflicts become civil wars when one side refuses to accept the existing authority. The left has rejected all forms of authority that it doesn't control. The left has rejected the outcome of the last two presidential elections won by Republicans. It has rejected the judicial authority of the Supreme Court when its decisions do not accord with its agenda. It rejects the legislative authority of Congress when it is not dominated by the left. It rejected the Constitution so long ago that it hardly bears mentioning. The left was for total, unilateral executive authority under Obama. But now, the left is for states unilaterally deciding what laws they will follow, as in sanctuary cities and immigration law. When Obama's in the White House, he is the ultimate final authority, and whatever he says goes, and leftists everywhere fall in line, which is why you have state governors happy to have the federal government take over health care, happy to have the federal government take over sanctuary cities, immigration, whatever. But when a non-leftist wins, then the left does a 180 and totally supports and invests the state's unilateral opposition to the authority vested in the Republican presidential winner. So now they are totally behind and for states unilaterally deciding what laws they will follow, as long as that involves defying immigration laws under Trump, not following them under Obama. It was for the sacrosanct authority of the Senate when it held a majority, then it decried the Senate as an outmoded institution when the Republicans took it over. The left was all for Obama defying the orders of federal judges, no matter how well grounded in existing law, and yet it is for federal judges overriding any order by Trump on any grounds whatsoever. It was for Obama penalizing whistleblowers, but now undermining the government from within has become patriotic. There is no form of legal authority that the left accepts as a permanent institution. It only utilizes forms of authority selectively when it controls them. But when government officials refuse the orders of the duly elected government because their allegiance is to an ideology whose agenda is in conflict with the president and Congress, that's not activism, protest, politics, or civil disobedience. It's treason. And that is the bomb that Mr. Greenfield throws and drops in this piece. That what we're actually in the middle of here is a civil war with the left and its political arm, the Democrat Party actually committing treason by refusing to accept the authority that the Constitution is in holding together our constitutional republic. After losing Congress, the left consolidated its authority in the White House. After losing the White House, the left shifted its authority to federal judges and unelected government officials. Think deep state. Each defeat led the radicalized Democrats to relocate from more democratic to less democratic institutions. And it's not just hypocrisy. Hypocrites maneuver within the system. The left has no allegiance to our system. It accepts no laws other than those dictated by its ideology. Remember now, what got me going on this is, if you're like me, do you ever wonder when all this is going to end? Let me phrase it a different way. Do you ever wonder when the day will come the Democrats will accept they lost? Do you ever wonder when the Democrats will accept that Trump is president? And the answer is they never will. They never will. They will never acknowledge losing the election. They will never acknowledge Trump winning the election because they will never acknowledge the authority that the Constitution vests in the outcome of elections. They simply oppose it and resist it when they aren't the authority. And when they aren't the authority, they seek ways to behave outside the Constitution and outside those limits of authority in order to subvert and undermine that authority. And as such, they are not willing participants in a constitutional and representative republic. And because of this, and his column is much longer than those things I've shared with you, Mr. Greenfield maintains we're in a civil war. He asks the ultimate question: when do civil wars end? Civil wars end when one side is forced to accept the authority of the other. Now, that also is what happens after elections. The winners know they won, the losers know they lost, and the losers in our system, believe me, our system is premised. Our system is dependent. Our system requires all of the participants to accept this authority. If all participants don't, then we have a problem. And if this gets to the point where a majority of our citizens, and we're not there yet, but if we get to the point where a majority of our citizens happen to think and act like today's modern leftists and Democrats, then it's over. If the majority of the Americans refuse to accept the Constitution, refuse to accept its authority, there's a reason why it isn't taught. There's a reason why the founding is not taught, why it's maligned and impugned. The left expects everyone to accept them and their ideological authority, whether they win elections or not. There's going to be gay marriage no matter what the vote is. There's going to be transgenders using whatever bathrooms they want, no matter what the vote is. There's going to be racism as we define it, no matter what the vote is. There's going to be bigotry, however we define it, whatever the vote is. Whatever the people think, whatever the popular majorities and consensus are, is irrelevant. Even if there is no science supporting climate change, there is going to be climate change, and you will accept it and you will love it. And if you don't, you become an enemy of the left. And that's something you don't want to be in their minds. How do Republicans behave when they lose elections? Well, we know all too well. We say, hey, they won. They get to pick their judges, with rare exceptions such as refusing to grant a hearing to Merrick Garland. But for the most part, I can hear Orrin Hatch saying it. I can hear numerous Republicans, McCain, say, hey, they won the election. They get to choose. It's not up to us to oppose every nominee they have. They won the election. They get to choose. That's what we say. Now, part of that is just a refusal to fight. Part of it is acquiescence to the authority. The left never, ever, for a fleeting moment thinks this way. They never think, Trump won. He gets his judges. What's the left saying? What's Chuck Schumer saying? Chuck Schumer said, you want to solve this problem? You let us join you in picking the judges. And that way, we will never have a conflict ever again. Well, that's not what the Constitution says. The president chooses his nominees, and the Senate is there to advise and consent, not to stop, not to define. The Senate is there primarily to make sure that whoever the president's picked is qualified. That's it. But that's not what it's become. To the left, they are there to stop everything that winning an election entitles a president to do. So as such, Mr. Greenfield says, we're in the middle of a civil war here. We're not having a political argument. We've got a civil war. And we have one faction of our American people that do not want to secede. They want to rule whether they use the Constitution or not. And so how does this end? Well, that remains the big question. But before you get to that, how does it end? I think part of ending it is educating people to exactly what's going on. The Democrats are not who they are. The media is not who they are. They're not interested in fairness or tolerance or equality or any of these buzzwords they throw around. They are authoritarian, totalitarian Stalinists. There's no compromise. There's no bipartisanship. None of that is permitted, not in this modern era. I have to take a break. We will continue. I'll continue chipping away at this, but I've got to get into other things too, folks, which we will do when we get back. Time to get started on the phones, and we go to New York City. I was in New York City last night. I got to tell you about that, too. This is Kim. Great to have you on the EIB network. Hello.
Hey, Rush. How are you?
I'm fine and dandy. Doing great. Great to have you here.
Great. I just wanted to say that, I voted for Trump to basically uphold our Constitution and our freedom.
Yes.
And I feel like he's basically acting like a puppet, and he's basically joined the swamp. And I know that the whole thing with Steve Bannon, I actually just read up that he hasn't been demoted. But I think that if anyone was to be removed, it should be Reince Priebus. I also think that it's very surprising and shocking that he's hiring Jared and Ivanka Trump to join the team and make such executive decisions.
Now, that should not... Wait a minute now, Kim, that shouldn't have surprised you. Jared Kushner and Ivanka were at his side throughout the campaign.
Right, but that's fine to just be on his side. But to give and make executive decisions, I know that Ivanka wants women's rights, and I know that she wants women's leave. But as a business owner, I just don't think that's right. And I didn't vote for Trump under that policy as well. So I really hope that he doesn't take that.
Yeah, the most interesting thing you've said is you think Trump's become the swamp.
Yes, I do.
How many other people have voted for Trump in your circle think the same thing you think?
Practically, well, there wasn't that many to start with, but the people that have voted for him are extremely disappointed in what they're seeing right now.
The people you know. This is
yes.
Okay. I'm out of Kim, thank you. I'm out of time. I got to go, but I appreciate your call. Okay, so I just caught a little bit of the joint press conference between King Abdullah of Jordan and President Obama. And when I happened to touch the button that turned on the audio from the press conference, Trump was berating somebody in the media. I'm not going to tell you when we're going to make a move. You know, I couldn't believe the previous administration. So we're going to go into Mosul. So we tell them 4 months in advance we're going to go into Mosul. And then a month goes by and we say we're going into Mosul in 3 months. He said, why would you do that? Why would you telegraph what you did? And the King of Jordan is looking over at him, not saying a word. Trump says, and then you got down to 1 week before the 4 weeks are out, and 4 months, and you say we're going into 1 week. Why would you do that? Look, I know what I'm going to do. I can't stand the fact that they've gassed these babies and these families, and this is a line in the sand, but I'm not going to tell you what we're going to do. And then he turns to the king, and the king says, in short, I endorse everything the president said. The president is competent, the president is on our side, and I speak for all of the leaders in the region. Do we all appreciate what the president is doing? And Trump then says, and let me tell you something else. I inherited a mess. I inherited the biggest mess, a bigger mess than anybody knows. And I'm going to fix it, but I'm not going to tell you when I'm going to do what? Go back to the king. Speaking of timelines, the president is exactly right on the timelines. We've been making very, very, very much good progress in Mosul and Iraq, and we have the terrorists on the run. They're on the run, but they're going to keep running, and we're going to keep going after them. We're going to find them, we're going to root them out. Trump's standing there nodding his head. I just love this. Now, look, the King of Jordan, like his father, is highly instrumental in what happens in the Middle East. And the King of Jordan is a very big United States ally. Jordan is also a very small country, and it's not a surprise that the King of Jordan would acquiesce, particularly in a public press conference. The left loves the King of Jordan because he's short and speaks with a British accent. So he's erudite, he's sophisticated, he's educated, he's quintessential European, except he's from Jordan, and he's short, so he's a victim. So he covers all the bases. They love the little guy. And they just would, the media desperately hoping that the King of Jordan would throw Trump under the bus somehow. You know, like wink and nod and send a signal. We're just hoping to survive this guy. Don't give up on us. We're trying to keep this guy reined in. They were desperate, I could tell, for any kind of such message. But the King of Jordan gave a full-throated, full-fledged endorsement of Trump, his leadership, and also said that other leaders in the region feel the same way he does. Now the thing is over. So maybe our crack production team can find the segment. Of course, my take on it was probably better than it was. I have that flair, folks. It's a born talent and ability to be able to make things that are great even better in my version of telling them. Back to the phones. Mike, Columbia, South Carolina. Welcome to the EIB network, sir. Hello.
Hello, Rush. Thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
But heavens to Murgatroyd, would you please help me make up my mind? Let me explain. Over the years, you've repeatedly said, and I always nod my head in agreement, that the alphabet drive-by media is the propaganda arm of the Democrat Party.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe I heard you say in your opening segment that role is actually reversed, that the Democrat politicians are merely the placeholders and the executors of the agenda, that the media is actually the one that's setting. So who's the tail and who's the dog?
I actually think that may be true. I have revised my thinking on that in just the past 2 to 3 weeks. I'm considering the structure that it is the Democrats that are an arm of the media, not that the media is an arm of the Democrats. In other words, the foundational base of the progressive movement is in the nationwide media. The Democrat Party are the elected hacks who enforce and introduce politically and legislatively and oppose the things that the Republicans put forth in a political sense. But that the constant, always there of progressivism and liberalism is the media, and that the The Democrat Party itself is an extension of that, as opposed to the media being an extension of the Democrat Party. And I say this because the Democrat Party lost the presidential election, and the Democrat Party has been losing elections since 2010. The media hasn't lost anything. Well, that's not true. The media, they're losing viewers and advertisers and so forth, but they haven't acquiesced to that change. They haven't subjected themselves to it. I think they are the fuel. They provide the backup and the energy and the support for the Democrats to do what they do. And look, it may be 6 of one, half dozen of the other when you get right down to it. Why does it matter to you? Why is it such an important thing to you?
Well, it kind of struck me. I'm willing to entertain that change, but another thing that you're always pointing out, especially with your montages, is that the media always seems to be so coordinated. They use the same words, the same phrases. They pursue or don't pursue the same stories, and historically we've just thought, well, the Democrats are feeding them those talking points, and that's the direction that they go. But if it's the media that's actually formulating and pushing the agenda for the Democrats and others in the establishment, then who's running the media? How can they be so coordinated unless they're not just all getting together? Something
they don't. This is someone. The thing. This is the thing. I guess in my never-ending quest to explain the left to people, and folks, I'm going to be doing this until my last day here. It's a never-ending quest, believe me. And my mind changes over the years on certain things that I believe as I learn more about it. But my point is that there doesn't have to be coordination because they're all of similar mindset. They're in terms of coordinating the term gravitas or looks bad, much of that is taught in journalism school. But they have their own private chat rooms. Journalists have their own private chat rooms, and they get together and chat with each other about just these kinds of things. It could well be that they're gathered in a bar after work, consuming adult beverages, and one of them happens to come up with a phrase, and they all like it, and they all start using it, and it spreads. But the point is they're all so like-minded. They're all so identical. It doesn't take coordination. Like Lois Lerner did not have to get a memo to know to screw around with conservative groups seeking a tax exemption, because she's of the mindset to deny them anyway, because in her mind they're illegitimate. They're not leftist. The conservative groups are not liberal, therefore they're illegitimate. They don't deserve a fair break. They don't deserve anything that might help them compete against liberals. So she doesn't need, there wouldn't be a smoking gun memo. She doesn't need instructions. Susan Rice did not need to be told to do what she did, even though she may have been. She didn't need to be. Evelyn Farkas did what she did on her own and owned up to it. It's just who they are. This is my never-ending question. You're looking for who is the grand poobah, who's the wizard behind the curtain, issuing the marching orders. And in the case of the media, there isn't one, but they all have the people who hire the underlings in positions of power, and they're all identical. I have no idea what the interviews are like. I don't know how they find what the procedure is in interviewing applicants, say, for correspondent at NBC News. What do you have to do to get that gig? In some cases, all you have to do is, at a small market, do a profile that destroys somebody, a powerful figure in your town, and you'll get noticed. But it all starts in journalism. All this stuff starts in school. All of it starts in the educational system. The propagandizing, the indoctrination, it all starts there. And by the time these people are finished with their finishing schools, called the Ivy League, and they come out wearing the same kind of clothes, same kind of shoes, ready to get hired, they already have mastered the thought process, which is not even really a thought process. There is no thinking involved here. There's simple loyalty to the cause. And once you spot a loyal member of the movement, then you bring them on and you hire them. So I don't think a whole lot of coordination is required because there's not that much diversity of thought in this group of people. You don't have competing intellectual arguments inside the left. You either have acceptance or heresy. And if you're a heretic, they throw you out. They treat you like a member of the opposition, and you're done for. And that's when you end up at Fox or somewhere else. I'm not saying that every leftist at Fox has been thrown out of the movement. There's some saboteurs in there, too. Don't think that's not going on. But you don't see the saboteurs at Fox. If there are any saboteurs, they're editors, they're producers, people that are never on camera. The assignment editors, the people that define how a segment's going to be discussed, what the questions are going to be based on who the guests are. These people have it all covered, folks, because this is not just a movement. It is a way of life. It's a religion. This is why I'm on this never-ending quest. If more people understood this, look, I'm going to stop saying that. I'm sure you're bored hearing me say that too. But I've always believed that trying to find a way to convert more people to ideological understanding would be the greatest anti-leftist weapon we could develop. Yeah. So last night was the annual Night to Remember cigar dinner. That is, I've attended every one of these for like 20 years, however many years it is. I have been there. I only missed one. And that's because I had a weather departure delay here. Couldn't leave here in time to get there. Other than everyone. And they're always held at the Four Seasons Restaurant, 52nd and Park Avenue in the Seagram's building in Manhattan. Except the Four Seasons Restaurant's not there anymore. It's moving to a new location at 49th Street because of a lease problem with the owner of the building, who drove a hard bargain, and so Julian Nicolini and the gang at Four Seasons had to move. But the cigar dinner was in the same facility. It's just under new ownership and new operation. So I sneak into town once a year, because I get audited. I haven't been to New York in years to work precisely because, just to make a statement, these people audit me I haven't lived there since 1997. Anyway, don't want to sidetrack myself. I arrive just at the end of cocktail hour when everybody's moving into the dining room, because I can't hear anybody at cocktail hour. It's pointless to try to talk in those circumstances. It's nothing but frustrating for me. So I time my arrival. So I land in New Jersey. I change cars twice on the way in to avoid the New York tax authorities. And I'm driving up to the building. I'm a little early. So I told the driver, go around the block a couple times. And in front of the building, on the plaza, in front of the Seagram's building, is a big white tent. And I said, what the heck is that? It didn't register at first what it was. And then I saw a lot of people in the tent the next trip around the block. And I said, uh-oh, don't tell me that's where the cigar thing is. Oh, no. I said, well, surely that's just a cocktail hour. Surely we'll be able to smoke at the table. It's a cigar dinner. No. I went to the first ever cigar dinner that did not allow cigars. Unbelievable. Bill de Blasio. Actually, the guy that got this insanity started is Bloomberg. You can't smoke anywhere in that city legally. Outside, Central Park, nowhere. I guess maybe they have little cigarette smoker huddles outside bars and stuff. And there is the Grand Havana Club and the Macanudo Club, so there are places, but these are not large enough for our cigar dinner. I mean, it was incredible. And this is the city that never sleeps. This is the city where anything goes. First ever cigar dinner where cigars were not permitted. After dinner, people had to go back out to the tent. I mean, sure, they happily did so. I just couldn't get over the irony of it. I even made mention of this in my eagerly anticipated remarks. I had a lot of fun with it. Have you ever heard of something? It's like going to a wine tasting and they serve sparkling water. Here's Teresa in Leesburg, Florida. Great to have you on the EIB network. Hello.
Hi, Russ. How are you?
I'm fine and dandy. Great to have you with us today.
Thank you for having me today. How are you?
Good.
Awesome. So yesterday you were talking about Tom Brady, and you were wanting to know what he is doing, that he is able to play like he's playing, and why he's looking so much younger now than what he was appearing to be
Well, since we're out of time, I'm short on time. I'm not going to. That's not what I wanted to know. But if you have an answer to what he's doing, I'd love to hear it.
Okay, so he is using a medical device from over in Germany. It's been around for 18 years, and we're just now hearing about it here in the United States. And it's a medical device that enhances blood flow all throughout your whole body. And it's delivering more oxygen and nutrients to the cells and then removing that waste.
You mean it does better than your own heart doing this?
Well, yeah, because it...
Does God know about this?
Pardon?
You mean Germany has invented a device that pumps blood and oxygen better than the heart does?
And I can't say that it pumps. It enhances blood flow. That's what I'm allowed to say. Yes. Yes, and it significantly enhances blood flow and increases the blood flow throughout your whole body. And with that, you're able to deliver the oxygen nutrients to the cells, but then it's also...
Now, how do you know that Tom Brady is using this device?
Because I'm part of the company. I'm not part of the company, but I'm a distributor.
Holy cow, we've got a scooper. Is it like a hyperbaric chamber type thing, principle-wise?
No, it's better than a hyperbaric chamber, because the hyperbaric chamber, once that pressure is released, then the oxygen, the oxygen is just the same as what it was, prior to.
So it's not avocado ice cream, it's a medical device.
Well, the thing is that the cells need three things to thrive.
Okay. Hey, look, I'm out of time. Don't go way out there, Teresa. I have to take a break. This is what they call on TV a hard break, which means it hurts and it doesn't move. Now, I checked with Teresa. I've had some people ask me. I checked with Teresa during the break. The device that she's talking about here that enhances blood flow and oxygen, it's not Viagra. Well, some people said it's what it sounds like. It's not that. Now, I'll ask her if that's a supplement to this device, but it's not. That's not what she was talking about. And we are back in the fastest 3 hours of media. Rush Limbaugh and the one and only Excellence in Broadcasting Network. We're here at 800-282-2882. The email address, rushbaugh at eibnet.com. President Trump has come to the defense of Ted Baxter. Come to the defense of Bill O'Reilly. He says, Bill O'Reilly's a good person. Trump says he shouldn't have settled. You don't settle these things. You fight these things all the way to the end. I think he's a good person. And this is big. I mean, very few people have the President of the United States speak up for you, come to your defense. I think, I'm guessing Trump was asked about it in a New York Times interview question somehow. I don't know that he initiated it, but that was the answer that he gave when it came up. So that's cool. Anyway, I want to go back here to Teresa rather than leave her on hold for the whole segment. Teresa, not a whole lot of time left here, but let me set the stage. She called in a previous hour. She claims to know what it is that Tom Brady is doing to keep himself young and to recover from football games almost instantly rather than taking 5 or 6 days. Why at age 40 he's able to perform as though he's 30. You claim to be with the company that makes a device that he's using. Now, Brady is saying it's diet and exercise and a whole regimen, but are you really telling us that it's not that, it's something else?
Well, did you see the MVP, the Super Bowl MVP conference that he had when he received the MVP award from Roger Goodell? If you listen to the last question of that interview, the reporter asked him, you're 39 years old, and how long do you see yourself playing the game? And in his answer, he said, I do something that's out of the box, and I share this with my friends. And back whenever I was younger, I was always in pain, or not in pain, but he uses that word, but
Right. It took him a long time to recover from the bumps and bruises of the game.
Right. And athletes love it because they're able to train harder, they're able to train longer, and they recover quicker. And, so what he said in a press conference was that, when he plays the game on Sunday, he has no discomfort, and he's able to go back to practice on Wednesday.
Right.
And, and without any discomfort.
Right. I know all that, but you're saying that it's a device made by the company you work for, and that he has surreptitiously referred to it because he's doing something out of the box.
Correct.
But should you be calling us and telling us this? Isn't this?
I don't work for the company. I'm a distributor with the company. I don't work for the company. I actually have my own distributorship.
Is it an American company?
They're based out of Liechtenstein.
They're based out of German.
Liechtenstein, yes, Germany.
Liechtenstein. Is it by any chance something called the Impella?
Nope.
It's not called the Impella.
Okay. No, but I'm going to be in Miami, and I would love to meet up with you, Rush, and share some information with you.
You want to pump me up.
You can look just as young as Tom Brady does. And, we need to keep you healthy so that you can aggravate the liberals.
I appreciate those sentiments. I literally, honestly appreciate those sentiments.
Roger Federer uses it as well.
But I hate, well, never mind. I was going to say I hate exercise, and I'm sure that you have to do exercise in order
Oh,
so it's magic. It's magic.
You're like my dad. My dad, and David Rivers, he does not like to exercise. But and he travels all around the country. He drives everywhere that he goes. And, for these conferences that he teaches at, and he does not get fanny fatigue. He calls it fanny fatigue. And he takes this device with him, and there's an application that you can sit on, and the whole time that you're sitting, it's enhancing blood flow. And
you have got it all. Fanny fatigue? See, now that would be applicable to me.
Yes. See, that's the reason why we need to meet. And my dad's taking me down to Miami next week because we have to meet with my grandpa. And I would love to come in and just, share it with you. That's all.
Well, look, I appreciate, I really do. These are, I don't do these kinds of things. I'm too famous to do stuff like this. And it's, you know, it penalizes. This is one of the prices I pay for being too famous. Other people could accept this offer with zero concerns, eager anticipation, but I can't afford to go there. And please don't take it snurdly. Please don't take it personally. I appreciate the call, Teresa. You've got a lot of people intrigued here. And I have a disclaimer here, folks. And Teresa, do not take this personally, please. You sound like an absolutely honest and really great person. But I have to say this. This is a radio talk show, and we do our best in the screening process. But even at that, anybody can call here and say anything. And so we have to be very, very guarded. This is what sets this program apart from others. Others would accept this and run with it just to make the news of it. But I don't want anybody... maybe a cold sales call. I mean, I'm sure she's trying to sell the product, no question. But at the same time here, it's up to Tom Brady to divulge these details about his regimen. It's not up to me to take a phone call from somebody who wants to betray it. I get very nervous with these kinds of things. And again, Teresa, please don't take that personally. This is just the responsibility and common sense I have to exercise here in doing the program. If Tom Brady wants to go public with what he's doing, fine, dandy. But it's not my position to. Well, now that's a good. She's calling. I was going to correct her about something. She said at the beginning of her call that yesterday I was wondering why and how Tom Brady's pulling this off. And that's not what the story was. The story is in a UK Guardian, and the upshot of the story is that Brady has an unfair advantage because of his genes, because of his genetic makeup. That's one of the reasons why Brady is able to play at age 39 and 40 when most players have retired or have deteriorated to the point that they can't play at a pro level anymore. And this story I get very leery of these things because it was a disguised attempt at undercutting Brady's achievements. But when I saw the word unfair and I saw the word advantage, and there was another phrase in this story that was a buzzword phrase to me that led me to believe that the reporter or the publication was looking at some method, some way to explain this that would deny that Brady had anything to do with it. He was just born with it. And I'll tell you where I saw it going. Where I saw it going. It didn't get there in this story, but it set the table for there eventually to be a reference to white privilege. When you start talking about genes, and you start talking about random luck, and you start talking about all of these other things, and genetic makeup, and genetic luck, and I get very, in this current climate, we put it in context, and I can see somebody somewhere down the road claiming it doesn't matter what Brady's regimen is. It doesn't matter how hard he works. He's got a lucky set of genes. Because in our society, in our culture, we love to build people up. We love to build the pedestal. And then we love to put them up there on it. And then we can't wait for the day they fall off of it. And so I detected a little bit of that in this story. So Teresa was calling to say, I happen to know what he's doing. And that's what our conversation was about. And then the medical device, which some people thought she was describing a heart pump, others thought she was describing Viagra. She didn't name the device. And I wasn't going to ask her for the name of the device, because it's not up to me to divulge any of this, especially when I don't know. So that is that. Now, I want to go back to the quest that I continued today to try to explain the left, who they are, why they do what they do, how it can all end. How can they be stopped? How can they be defeated? Why do they need to be stopped? That, when you get to that question, do they need to be stopped? Yes, because they're undermining the country, folks. The way liberalism has manifested itself, it's now become radical leftism. It's not even liberalism even more, although it is, but it's way, way, way beyond that. And I want to share with you another passage from the column that got me thinking about all this. The Civil War is Here by Daniel Greenfield at Front Page Mag. He says liberalism and the left, progressivism, is not just hypocrisy. You know, you look at Gorsuch, for example. They're going batty over the idea that Mitch McConnell may pull the trigger on the nuclear option. And people say, what do you mean? Harry Reid did it for countless hundreds of judges Obama appointed. Aren't you being a little hypocritical? You're getting mad we might go nuclear on the Supreme Court nominee when you've already gone nuclear on every district court nominee so that Obama could pack the court? And as I've always instinctively pointed out, hypocrisy is not the way to go after these people. Hypocrisy never sticks to them. It never hurts them to be hypocritical because that's not what they are. They're not, this is not really hypocrisy, what they're doing here and getting away with in terms of trying to stop the nomination and confirmation of Judge Gorsuch. Because hypocrites maneuver within the system. Today's left has no allegiance to the system, and that is the point. The left does not accept the system. Even when they win, they are about destroying the system. When they lose, they ignore it and dare you to stop them. The left accepts no law other than law dictated by its ideology. He said, do not think of liberalism as activism. Do not think of it as protest. Do not think of liberalism as politics or civil disobedience. It's none of those things. It is treason. According to Mr. Greenfield, it is treason. Now, I love analogies as a way of explaining something. I can imagine that right now, treason, Rush, you got to be real careful. I'm quoting Mr. Greenfield for you here, but I still want to try to explain this by analogizing the left in America. There is a group that they are very close to. And if I just said so, it would shock you. I'm going to try to explain it after saying so. The way the left behaves today in virtually everything that they do. Do you realize how close it is to radical Islam? You know, minus the terrorism. Let's look at the similarities. For the kind of Islamists we're talking about, who the Sharia Islamists, there is no authority but Islam. To the left, there is no authority but themselves. They respect and recognize no other authority. They don't recognize the authority of elections. They don't recognize the authority of public opinion. They don't recognize the authority of the Constitution, even though they all swear an oath. Why do you think we require everybody in government to swear an oath to the Constitution? Because that's the glue, folks. That is the glue that keeps everything together. The reason all of these oaths of office and oaths of naturalization require pledging fidelity to the Constitution is that is supposed to be the compact that unites all of us. Winning or losing, we are united as Americans, defined by our Constitution. Swearing the oath announces the understandings based on which we become we the people. If you have a huge movement in the country that's not just rejecting, but actively undermining the Constitution, then it becomes a real question. And once that group becomes big enough, a majority of the population, then it becomes questionable whether we even have a we the people anymore. And this behavior is very, very close to Sharia Islam. There is no authority but Islam. It's a core tenet. The ruler must be obeyed as long as he complies and enforces Sharia. And if the ruler abandons Sharia, they assassinate him, like in the case of Anwar Sadat or Mubarak. Now, they don't do assassinations here, but if the left's leader abandons them, you know what happens to them. They're immediately forgotten, destroyed, cast aside, and ruined. But here, let me try a different way. If Islamists are in the role of Democrats, then in my analogy, Americans assume the role of the GOP. We proclaim that our commitment to tolerance means that we have to make room at the table, even for Islamists and people we disagree with, notwithstanding that they deny our right to govern ourselves under our own principles. In other words, you've heard people say the Constitution is not a suicide pact. That's because in a we the people situation, we have to tolerate those who disagree with us. We have to tolerate those. We're not supposed to cave into them, but if there is a mutual respect for authority, of course, Sharia Islam is never going to accept the U.S. Constitution. The American left doesn't either when it goes against them. Maybe if you look at the Islamist analogy, it could be somewhat easier to understand the American left. It's not that Islamists have no respect for authority, it's that they believe there is no authority outside them. They clearly granted Obama all the authority in the world, or they were going to grant Hillary all the authority in the world, but that's within their system. But they're never going to grant George W. Bush the authority. They're never going to acknowledge the authority of Donald J. Trump. They're never, ever going to do that. I have to take a break. Hang on. We'll be right back. Don't go away. My point is the left, the Democrat Party, the media, however you want to describe them, everything but what they believe and everything but who they believe is illegitimate. There is no crossing the aisle. There is no compromise. There is no working together to prove Washington or government works. There is only one way. When they are in power, they pretend it's because their beliefs are a popular mandate. But that is disproven every time they lose. Their views cannot be the result of a popular mandate, otherwise they would never lose elections. When they lose elections, when they're not in power, their beliefs dictate that everything else must be delegitimized. And that's exactly what we're seeing today. And everything about this Russian collusion and everything about Susan Rice and all of these investigations and the leaking, it's all about delegitimizing the duly elected, constitutionally legal president and Congress. It's about delegitimizing that. It's not about working with them. It's not about them having a head case and not understanding yet that they lost. It's not about they're going to come to their senses down the road. It's not that they're emotionally unstable and are one day going to realize they lost. They're going to come back to the table. That's not who they are anymore. This is not your dad's Democrat Party. That Democrat Party of the 60s and 70s, it's gone. It has been radicalized. And it is like Sharia Islam. There is nothing else, and there's no room for anything else. And if you aren't with them, then you are never to be even acknowledged. You are to be delegitimized. You are to be destroyed. Pure and simple. There is no compromise. There is no bipartisanship. There is always a pretense that they represent the popular mandate, when they very rarely really do. My earlier question, how do civil wars end? Well, they only end when one side is forced to accept the authority of the other. If you look at the Civil War, the actual Civil War, the South wanted to secede. The left does not want to secede. They want to take over and eliminate the Constitution or rewrite it to reflect what they believe and call it the same thing. They don't want to secede. So how do you get to the point where they accept the authority that is the Constitution and thus end what? Because look, this battle is never ending. It doesn't end when they lose elections. It never does. It doesn't even change when they lose elections, right? I mean, they don't change. The media doesn't change. Republicans win the elections, but it's still the biggest battle in the world. It's every bit the battle as when the Republicans are in the minority. It's every bit as big. It just changes. But elections don't end it. Elections do not defeat them. Just some things to think about here. Jerry, Dover, Delaware, great to have you, sir. How are you doing?
Greetings, Rush, from a fellow Southeast Missourian. You mentioned something a while ago about the election in Ferguson.
Yeah.
I think it should be investigated because I'm pretty sure the Russians were involved.
Well, it is very strange. You know, the population of Ferguson's like 64% black, and the incumbent white mayor won by 55-45. And the very left that we're talking about is beside itself. They are enraged, and they can't explain this. After all they did, and yet Ferguson, Missouri, with a majority black population, reelected an incumbent white mayor. And that's why Jerry here is wondering whether or not the Russians had anything to do with it. The crack production team got me the Trump and King Abdullah sound bites that I told you about. So if you were here, you heard me recount in my inimitable fashion this interchange or this portion of the press conference. We actually got the bites now. And we're going to start. This is in the Rose Garden at the White House today. President Trump. Question from the PBS White House correspondent. Last year, you seemed to be reluctant to intervene in Syria directly. Is that one thing that's changed after yesterday's attack?
I watched Mosul, where the past administration was saying we will be attacking in 4 months. And I said, why are they doing that? Then a month goes by and they say we will be attacking in 3 months, and then 2 months, and then we will be attacking next week. And I'm saying, why are they doing that? And as you know, Mosul turned out to be a much harder fight than anyone thought. And a lot of people have been lost in that fight. I'm not saying I'm doing anything one way or the other, but I'm certainly not going to be telling you, as much as I respect you, John.
Yeah, that's John, whatever his name is, John Yang. So I'm not going to tell you. Why would I tell you what we're going to do, even though I respect you? Next, King Abdullah, in 38 seconds here to say that he supports President Trump.
All of us have a responsibility to help the president push us over the finish line. And so his team has been in the region. They've been talking to all the partners. And it is our job to facilitate the atmospherics between Israelis and Palestinians to move together and give the support to the president to be able to smooth the edges over between Israelis and Palestinians to achieve this. And the president understands that if we don't solve this problem, how are we going to win the global fight against terrorism, which is his number one priority? So this is a core issue that he understands, and I think he has the commitment, and he has my full support for this, as he does from many, many countries in our region.
And like I said, the drive-bys are very upset by this. They love King Abdullah. You can hear there he's very sophisticated. He's got that perfect British accent. He looks great in a European cut suit. Plus, he's real short. So that makes him a victim. So he's got it all covered as far as the left is concerned. And he comes out and totally supports Trump. And it just infuriated him. Now, Trump, we don't have it here, but Trump then, he nodded, and he thanked King Abdullah that way, but then he took right over again, and he said, let me just tell you something. I inherited a mess here. I inherited the biggest mess. It was such a big mess. The king knows it. The king knows what a big mess it was. A big mess, not just Mosul. It's a big mess everywhere. I'm going to fix it. I'm going to fix it. It's on me now, I'm going to tell you. But it's a bigger mess than anybody ever knew. And the king came back and basically in the same kind of language, well, of course, we support the president. It's a big mess. It's always been a big mess. It's always going to be a big mess. It's never going to not be a big mess. Then the next bite is another question from a drive-byer. That'd be Julie Pace of the left-wing radicals at the Associated Press. She said, you've condemned the chemical attacks in Syria, but you also appeared in your statement yesterday to pin some of the blame on our beloved Obama. Well, you're the president now, you pig. You feel like you bear responsibility for some of the attack? Why are you laying it all off on the guy we love, Obama? You're a pig.
The Obama administration had a great opportunity to solve this crisis a long time ago when he said the red line in the sand. And when he didn't cross that line after making the threat, I think that set us back a long ways, not only in Syria, but in many other parts of the world, because it was a blank threat. I think it was something that was not one of our better days as a country. So I do feel that, Julie. I feel it very strongly.
And there's another bite. It was the next page. I didn't see it till now. Again, Julie Pace at a left-wing radical AP. Can I just quickly ask you, if the chemical attack, does it cross a red line for you? Because I heard you say, Obama, he drew the red line, and he didn't do anything. But you're the pig. We love Obama, and you're criticizing Obama. You're the ingrate. So now, is this chemical attack cross a red line for you, and what are you going to do about it, pig?
It crossed a lot of lines for me. When you kill innocent children, innocent babies, little babies, with a chemical gas that is so lethal, people were shocked to hear what gas it was. That crosses many, many lines, beyond the red line, many, many lines.
So there you have it. That's just a little bit of the presser this afternoon between President Trump and the King of Jordan. That would be King Abdullah. And we will be right back. Don't go away. Now, to maybe further illustrate my possible theory that it's not the Democrats that lead the way, that it's the media, that it's the Democrats that are the arm of the media, not that the media is the arm of the Democrats. Let's take a look at two things. Let's take a look at the resistance movement. Okay, so reverse things and say Obama or say Hillary won, but the Republicans are behaving like the Democrats are today, refusing to accept it, resisting everything. There are Republicans in Hillary's cabinet who are in Hillary's bureaucracy leaking details about all the criminality and so forth. What do you think the media would be doing? The media would not be supporting it. The media would be ripping the Republicans to shreds for failing to accept the results of the election. They'd be calling them bad sports, and they'd be setting out trying to destroy them because they're not behaving in a mature way. They're threatening the Constitution. They're threatening the government. They're threatening the country. And they would be ridiculing everything they are supporting the Democrats doing today. And that's the difference. The Democrats engage in this resistance. The election didn't happen. It's illegitimate. And the media does what? Promotes it, legitimizes it, justifies it. With Gorsuch, on this filibuster business, imagine that it was the Republicans stopping an Obama appointee that had been nominated, not like Garland, and had a hearing, and they were doing all this. The media would be creaming the Republicans, but they're not doing that to the Democrats. They're guiding them, they are amplifying, they're supporting, and they are running interference for the Democrats on this. And that's important to understand in the whole context here of what is really going on. There is no acceptance of the outcome of the election. There is nothing but a focused effort to delegitimize everything that happened. And whatever it takes to do that is fine. Whatever it takes to do that is supported and promoted. And when the objects of this, when the Trump people, the Republicans, when the targets of this attempt to defend themselves, that is called proof of criminality. And the question still remains, when does this stop? What stops it? Because what we're in the middle of is indeed a battle for the control over the Constitution of this country and what it is going to say and how important and relevant it is going to be. Make no mistake about that. Well, that's it. Sorry, my friends, another exciting excursion into broadcast excellence hosted by me, your highly trained broadcast specialist, has come to a screeching but temporary halt because nothing ever ends here. We just have to take longer breaks. So we'll be back here in 21 hours. Masters starts tomorrow, and I promise I will not engage in spoiler alerts for those of you who plan on watching it later in the day. Maybe. See you tomorrow.